Hi, my name is John with Mixology Canada Q-Pro. I'm just going to take a moment to show you the SB3X shaver blender and some of the common issues that we run into with this piece of equipment. If you stick with me through the whole video, I'm just going to run through it real quick and show you do's, don'ts, and how you should maintain this piece of equipment. So let's start off first things first. One of our most common things that we hear, most common service issue is the machine isn't working. There's a couple of reasons for the machine not to work. One being if the lid is off, you'll see there's a little safety pin right here. If the lid is off, this little pin doesn't go down, flick this switch and this light will go off. And that's basically just safe so you don't get your fingers in there and run the machine by accident. So make sure the lid is always on. Again, this problem can happen if you have too much ice in the ice hopper, which would keep the lid up as well. So just make sure the lid's on, the light's on. The second reason this machine isn't working, sometimes we have it happens very rarely, but we can have what you call bridging of ice, and that's where a couple chunks of ice or a few chunks of ice will actually bridge together and cause a clump. It can temporarily jam the machine, flipping the breaker inside the machine itself. When that happens, you'll push number one. The shaver will not, the shave motor will not shave ice. However, you will still hear the mix motor on the bottom. So you won't get any action up top, but you'll hear the mix motor. And the light will still be on, but you won't get any ice shaving. When that happens, you want to come around the right side of the machine, about 5 inches back from this initial lip here on the right side of the machine. You want to push this little rubber button right here. Okay, that'll reset the machine. This button will save you every time. 99 times out of 100, this little button will help you. Now, I've mentioned shaved ice will flip the breaker. Another reason the breaker can get flipped is from what we call a foreign object. Foreign objects can be a couple things. It can be change. It can be caps from a beer bottle, for instance. And generally how that happens is if you go to an ice well behind the bar to get the ice for the machine, never scoop the ice out of the ice well. Always go right back to the source, to your actual ice maker. If you go to the ice well, that's 9 times out of 10, that's where you're going to find a foreign object. So always make sure you go directly to the source, to your ice maker for ice. So once you push the reset button, the machine's up and running, you've got ice in there. Now it's time to make some drinks. Now you put the blender cup in here, you'll see this here is our splash guard. It's a little rubber splash guard. Now this is going to get covered with product. So you want to keep this clean at all times. Constantly clean this with soap and water. And it just pops right up onto our ice chute. This is the ice chute here. The ice chute is held on with thumb screws. These thumb screws can vibrate loose from time to time. Just make sure these are always snug. If the ice chute's a little bit loose, just make sure you tighten up all these thumb screws underneath. Now if for some reason you do lose a thumb screw or two, it's not a disaster. The ice hopper itself is held up by 4 thumb screws. These are the exact same as these, same thread. So you can steal one of these thumb screws and borrow it for the ice chute until we can get you some more. It's not a big deal. So these are the exact same as those. Make sure you clean this at all times, your splash guard. That brings us to the cup. Now I can't say this enough, I'm going to say it twice. These cannot go in the dishwasher, glass washer, ever, ever, ever. These cannot go in the glass washer, ever. How you clean the blender jug is very simple. I would recommend doing it daily. It's good to get into the habit of cleaning these. Generally just soap and water. It's made up of 2 main parts. How they come apart, if you remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, this is the opposite. So what I like to do is use the actual teeth of the machine as a wrench, put the cup on, spin it clockwise to loosen these 2 parts, the top and the bottom, the base. Once you get those apart, you're going to see there's a blade assembly inside. Now this is very sharp, so be very careful. On the blade assembly itself, you have 2 gaskets, one on the bottom and one on the top. So once you get this completely apart, make sure you wash the top, the base, the gaskets, and the blade assembly in soap and water. To reassemble, doesn't matter, these gaskets are exactly the same. So put one on the top. I like to assemble this first, it's a little bit easier. Put a gasket on the top, gasket on the bottom, drop it into the base, spin the top on, remember, counterclockwise to tighten. And again, use the teeth as a wrench. on the bottom here. And just give it a good snug tight fit. If you make sure this is snug and tight, the product won't get in between the top of the cup and the bottom of the cup. Those gaskets are what seals the two together. Okay, so make sure that's nice and snug. So now you've made drinks, your splash guard's clean, everything's clean, you're good to go. At the end of the evening, it's getting close to the end of the night. Obviously, if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, you close at 2, you're getting down. You're not going to fill this completely full of ice again. If you're down here, at the end of the evening, what you want to do is you want to shave out the rest of the ice. So how you do that, you hit the shave button, it's the second from the bottom, and just shave out any remaining ice that may be in the machine. Okay? Once you've done that, you want to come over to your cleaner. Now this is the second most important part of this machine, sanitizing. Wherever you have water, you're going to have a buildup of algae, just like you have on the side of a fish tank. Won't end up in the drinks. However, it will end up in the drain pan that just sits here underneath the ice bowl. Okay? That goes to another tube that goes down and out this little drain hose at the bottom. Once algae builds up inside the machine, the water will back up and actually leak out the bottom of the machine. To prevent this from happening, you want to use a food-safe sanitizer. We use K5, for instance. This is a K5 sanitizer, food service safe. This package should last you a very long time. Reason being, half of this package goes in 1 gallon container of water. Half a package to 1 gallon. Now you can break it down any way you like. I've seen a lot of bar staff use old Clamato jugs, what have you, but that's the ratio. Half a package to 1 gallon. Whatever container you decide to use, obviously, just logic, make sure that you mark it appropriately and tell what it is. You wouldn't want anyone to consume it by accident. It is food service, however, you don't want to drink it as a cocktail. So once you get this mixed up, make sure you mix it up from scratch every time. Don't just add water to it. I've seen bar staff actually add water to the jug. And after a month, what you end up with is a jug of water, which does absolutely no good whatsoever. Always make sure you mix up a fresh jug, half a package, 1 gallon. Mix it up well. Once you get all the ice out of the machine, take the lid off the top and pour 4 ounces. That's all you need. 4 ounces of sanitizer and 2 ounces down here. So 4 ounces in the top, 2 ounces in the bottom. So you can see this would last you a fairly long time. Okay? Don't rinse it out. Leave the sanitizer running, dripping through the machine all night, and it'll take care of any residue that's built up inside the machine. And just leave it in overnight. The next morning when you come in, if you'd like to rinse it out, you can. However, just putting in fresh ice in the morning should blast through any of that sanitizer that's residual in the machine itself. Now when it drips down through, like I said, it goes down into a tube and down into a drain hose. The drain hose is attached on the bottom of the machine to a little gray spout that comes out the bottom. Now, we've got it for this demonstration draining into a sink. But a lot of the time, this should be draining into a drain hole in the floor. Now, obviously, water drains downhill. And the longer the run, the more problems you could potentially have. You want to keep this hose as short as possible from the machine itself to where it's draining to. Keep a very short run of the hose, as short as possible. And make sure you never have any spots in the hose where water can gather. Obviously, everybody knows water runs downhill. Any plumber will tell you that. Make sure that there's always adequate drainage and always adequate slope down on the hose itself, so no water can gather and trap itself anywhere along the line, because guaranteed that's where your problem's going to be. Okay? So always make sure there's a good drainage from the bottom of the machine to whichever drain you're running to, whether it be a sink. I've seen, even sometimes you use a bucket on the floor. But the optimum system is running to a drain hole in the floor itself. Okay? Now, for calibration, let's just talk about calibration finally here. Calibration is very simple. For all intents and purposes, you can calibrate this machine to any drink size, be it 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 ounce, and so on. Whatever calibration you set this machine for, on number 1, is going to be doubled on 2 and tripled on number 3. You'll see under the stop button, you've got the power button here. Under the stop button, you've got buttons 1, 2, and 3. Whatever calibration number 1 is set at, again, 2 is double, 3 is triple. So for today's demonstration, I'm going to talk about number 1 being set at 12-ounce drinks. That's your average standard drink size. For a 1 ounce drink, you want to have about 6.5 ounces by weight. About 6.5 ounces. So how you do that is what you want to do is get a cup and hit number 1, fill it up with that amount of ice that comes out of number 1 and weigh it. If it's less, what you want to do is go up into this little calibration screw. There's a calibration screw right up here, just to the right of the ice chute. It's slotted. You want to use a large slotted screwdriver, put it up into the slot, and turn it clockwise for more ice. Now you don't have to turn it very far. Turn it about 1/8 of a turn at a time until you get your desired amount of ice. If you find you've gone too far and ended up with a snow pile, it's not a disaster. What I like to do, or what I tell folks to do, is just turn it all the way counterclockwise. Remember, left is less. Counterclockwise until you get no ice whatsoever, and then start over. Generally about half turns at a time, and then break it down to quarter and then 1/8 of a turns till you get the desired amount you need. Okay? So for a 12 ounce drink on number 1, you need about 6.5 ounces of ice by weight, and of course 2 will be 24 ounce finished drink, and 3 will be a 36 ounce finished drink. 1, 2, 3. Okay? So we'll put it all back together. You just generally want to give the machine a good wipe down every once in a while. The lid itself should only ever be used soap and water. And the most important part, sanitize, reset button. Okay? Thanks for watching today. I hope I've solved some of your issues or some of your questions. If you have any other questions, our service department is available 7 days a week. You can call during business hours, or we have after-hour service as well. Right after this video, I will have a little pop-up, and it'll give you all the numbers that you need.
Nibbling on sponge cake, watching the sun bake. All of those tourists